Let's stop pretending we don't see it. There's a pattern here. Angry, isolated young men, increasingly disconnected from reality, playing out violent fantasies online, in forums, in games, and sometimes in real life. And it's not just about loneliness or awkwardness. It's about delusion. It's about obsession. It's about this toxic feedback loop where entitlement meets fantasy and rage becomes identity. In this episode, I talk again with psychotherapist Shavaun Scott, who has spent years studying the psychology behind mass shooters, radicalized young men, and the broken systems that create them. And we get right to the core of what makes this all so dangerous. The belief that the world owes you something, and that violence is a legitimate way to settle the score. We're talking about kids who think Elliot Rodger was a hero. Kids who believe women are the enemy. Kids who themselves see themselves not as lost, but as warriors in some imagined war. The kind of thinking doesn't just show up overnight. It's built over years through disconnection, through unchecked online consumption, through untreated trauma, and yes, through violence normalized in the name of entertainment. But this isn't just parenting as a problem. It's a culture-wide issue. We're handing kids unlimited access to the darkest parts of the internet and then acting surprised when they fall in. We're not talking about sex. We're not talking about anger. We're not talking about fantasy. And the longer we avoid those conversations, the more ground we give the ones who are absolutely willing to have them on Reddit, on Discord servers, in murder simulators designed as video games. Shavaun and I break down how these belief systems take hold, how parents can intervene, even when it feels like it's too late, and what happens when society treats connection as optional and empathy as outdated. Because when someone calls themselves the supreme gentleman while plotting mass murder, the real question isn't how did this happen, it's why didn't anyone stop it? So let's get into it.
I go back to Elliot Rodgers again, who called himself the supreme gentleman.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you were a psychopathic, narcissistic, sadistic murderer who fantasized about killing all the women on the planet, but still called himself a nice guy. And you talk about a misperception of reality. It's almost delusional, but yes, you do find people who maybe have this kind of submissive quality in relationships until, as you say, you hit that trigger issue for them, and then you see the rage.
And that's a big question. I mean, what makes someone, decide to, go from living this, semi-normal life to thinking, yeah, I'm going to try and outdo Elliot Rodger, or just, there's no path in this equation where it's going to work out well for you. Yeah. You're not going to eliminate women and the problem's going to be done. You're not going to teach any lesson and people are going to be, respecting you. It just looks more and more crazy, but they don't seem to see that aspect, and that's why we have the problem we do, I guess.
Yeah. The word that came into my head as you were describing that is it's kind of semi-delusional, if not fully delusional. And so this is a person, again, that may pretend and appear to be normal, but their thought life is not normal. And it's probably something that progresses gradually over time, depending on their life experiences and the things that they're exposed to, is their perceiving is really not in reality.
The thing with this, and I want to talk about this too from a parental standpoint or just someone who's seeing this or noticing this, because we talk about look for the red flags. I think a lot of us can identify the red flags. I think a lot of us have identified the red flags in a lot of cases, in a lot of people. We see them. The fact is there's just nothing you can do about it until they actually do something. If you're seeing your kid on these sort of forums, short of taking away their computer and isolating them from the internet. That's not going to stop anything. They'll find other ways of getting there. This is a shift, a psychological shift that would have to be made in someone if they've already gone down that road. And I'm guessing that's not an easy shift to make. I mean, especially for someone who maybe has been there for a long time. Let's talk about that for a little bit. If you're a parent and you got the 15-year-old that seems to think, Elliot Rodger, is a hero, or just somewhere along that path, that they have this anger towards women. They're isolated. They're doing their own thing. But they seem to have some warning signs here. What do you do?
Horrifying. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And I would say, of course, I'm going to say, since I'm a therapist, get that kid into therapy.
Yeah.
But sometimes the kid is not at all cooperative with that idea. And there are all kinds of ways of, I'll say manipulating them into therapy. But probably the most helpful thing for a parent is the parent get to a therapist and figure out, in our unique family, in our situation, what are strategies for intervening with my kid here? So you're not just there to talk about yourself, although you can do that, talk about your stress and frustration, but talk about, how do I manage this and how do I intervene? And, a lot of times some of the things that are helpful are getting a mentor. Maybe you can find, and this is something a therapist could probably help guide you. How do you find that if you're a single mom and your kid doesn't have a good dad figure in life and is involved in this dark stuff online? How can you find a big brother person, somebody who's in their 20s or 30s that can really be a mentor and get this kid out of this dark place and involved in healthier activities?
I agree. Much easier said than done. And especially if you have a kid that's in that mindset and you suddenly are like, hey, you're going to go hang out with this person. And they're going to be like, screw you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reaction you're going to get. And that's the scary part of, like, once you go down this road, is there coming out of this road? I mean, it's a lot of steering, but I mean, this is an ideology. And once you kind of been radicalized to a certain extent of believing you're in the right and they're in the wrong, I don't know how you really pull yourself out of this one. I mean, is there data showing that it happens, that it works, maybe very early on? I don't know.
I don't know of any data. It would be a hard one to research. I do think that there's hope. At the end of the Mass Killers book, I talk about a case that was referred to me because somebody was making threats to shoot up their school. And it's really, and he did not want to be in therapy. Yeah. And so that was the place we started. Was it really sucks when your parents and the school forces you to come talk to me. And I totally validate that, because who am I, and what do I know about your life? And so you validate that they don't want to do it, first off. And sometimes then that causes a click, and all of a sudden, hey, you're okay, I want to talk to you. But I think the biggest hope is heart-to-heart connections with somebody. And if you can't do that with your parent, you've got to find somebody else that's a healthy person, healthier, certainly.
That's the key.
And really develop the ability to have a bond with them. Some of the other cases where somebody has been in a very dark path with white supremacy and got into a university where they were around people of other races and connected on a deeper level than maybe they had up in their home in Idaho, right, where they were from.
Idaho, go figure.
Some of those people have written books about how that happened for them. And once they had heart-to-heart, deeper connections with healthier people who were different from them, reality started to shift for them. So I like to hold hope that there are paths out of it. But it sure can be a scary time for parents if they discover this kind of stuff.
It's got to be. And it's one of those things where, like, I think if you're discovering they're already really into it, is it too late? Where, try and make a connection there. But the best damn thing is, if you have a kid, keep that connection going as best as you can from a very young age. Don't wait until, they turn 12 and now they're kind of off doing their thing. And at 15, I really have to intervene, but you missed the last 3 years of their life because you're just letting them explore. Like, yes, let them explore, but be part of their life. And at the very least, even if it's not that, best buddy connection you had when they were 8, try and keep something. Try and keep some window of communication open, I would think, because I think all this goes to chaos is when there is no more communication. I mean, is that one of the keys you would say as to how this can go really off the rails, is when parents just have given up and it's like, you go figure it out and good luck in life?
Yeah, it's when the kid is negative and moody and starting puberty, and they're sort of relieved when, oh, well, look, he's in his room and he's playing these harmless video games all night and staying up too late and playing all weekend long. But they're not in my hair then, and I'm not dealing with the moodiness. And so they disconnect, and they allow that disconnection to happen. And yeah, you can't let that go on for 2 or 3 years and then expect that you're going to just magically come in at some point when there's been some red flags and say, and now we're going to do this all different. You have to maintain that mirroring throughout life. It's a hard job. And you've got parents who are both working long hours and struggling. And I see so many parents who are just losing their mind from stress. Yeah. And so it's a big problem in society. We don't have, in most families, you don't have a parent who's at home all the time. Mm-hmm. Kids spend far too many hours alone. Yeah. I know even I was a working parent when my kids were teenagers, and I knew they were spending too much time online. And I would my way of coping with it, which was very naive, was to unplug the keyboard and take it with me in the back of my car, to work. And soon I discovered that the kid just went down the street and borrowed somebody else's keyboard, So I'm like, oh, well, that didn't work. So I don't want parents to feel shame over the struggle, because I know it is a struggle. Yeah. But it's just critically important that we do our best. And if parents are just feeling absolutely overwhelmed, find a therapist for themselves to help with coping strategies and ways to attune to their kids. And sometimes some family therapy is helpful.
Because you're not going to be a good parent if you're not in a good headspace yourself. And 100%. And that is so important in all this, because I get it. I mean, I'm exhausted by the time I walk out of the studio at night. But I make sure that I'm spending a couple hours with my daughter every single day, whether she's in a pissy mood or not. And it's just, I'm there. And, sometimes I'll just, even if she's in a pissy mood, I'll just hang out, be in the same room with her. And usually after a little while, she comes over, starts talking. Yeah. And you'd be amazed what a little patience would do. Parenting is not an easy job. And I think a lot of folks really, they know that. But it doesn't have to be as difficult as we make it if we just put the effort into it. If you, it's like a recipe. If you don't look at the recipe and it's something you've never made and you take a guess at it, but the recipe is right there, probably not going to turn out right. If you spent the extra 5 seconds to read the recipe and use the ingredients that you have, it will probably turn out right. But you just have to take that extra bit when you already feel too tired to do it, because that's going to be the most important job of your life. And I feel like a lot of folks, it's just like, oh, it's too much.
And the other thing you do, which I admire so much, is you go on trips with your daughter.
Oh, yeah.
You have adventures with your daughter. You include your daughter in things. Yeah. And so many people are doing the opposite. They want to get away from the kids. And so they leave the kids somewhere else while they go on the trips. And it's just putting the time in.
It is. I mean, if you have a mindset of, I want to be away from my family and the people that I'm supposed to love, your kids are going to do the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to lose them. And then you're going to, hopefully, if you do lose them, hopefully they find a path that isn't insane or full of, horrible consequences. Some do. But otherwise, they could use a hand from a parent if it's a healthy human being, but you got to be there first. Let's talk for a moment about Bryan Kohberger. I mean, his background, social rejection, misogynistic comments, obsessive behavior. It's up in the air. A lot of people don't necessarily get diagnosed with being an incel. But from what we know about Kohberger, and we don't know if he was on any forums or not, Is Koberger an incel? Is he someone we could look at and go, this seems to be the motivation for your ideology here?
I would bet money on that. It sure fits. And when you put all the pieces of what we know about his history together, my guess would be that his online activity was very dark, and that this probably developed in early adolescence. And you combine that with an autism diagnosis, with obsessive compulsive disorder, all these other qualities. It's part of a puzzle that I think has come together.
I mean, it really is. And again, when you see folks like this, I mean, it's not, I would say it's not super difficult to pick them out from a crowd, at least if you're talking to people a little bit. Is that our biggest problem? We can see something, we can say something. It's just we're very limited on what we can do about something. And in reality, I mean, if let's say it's not your parent, or it's not your child, you're not the parent, where you do have a little more option for how to help that person. If it's someone you work with, someone that, is a friend or a friend of a friend, it's in that circle of folks, and you're seeing this sort of behavior. Obviously, it's not your job to go fix somebody, but, what do you do? Is there anything one can do from that sort of a perspective if they're seeing somebody that's really getting off the rails in this, other than, I'm going to back away because this person might be a loose cannon?
Yeah, it's hard to recognize so often that we are powerless over these kind of things. But I think it goes back to just making those human connections. And you never know, somebody that you took a little bit of extra time to befriend or invite to an activity, that may have been enough of a human connection to alter something inside of them that could have gone down a darker, more violent path. And I think we all have an influence in the world. We don't always know what that influence is, but that's one of the things I share a lot about social media, is those little tiny acts of kindness and compassion, and seeing the people around us. And, we can be a force of good in the world, and we'll never know what all the outcomes are.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like ultimately, at the end of the day, incels, or this way of thinking, is really a rejection of society as a whole. It's a rejection of humanity. It's a rejection of saying, humanity, life has not been good to me, so I'm going to screw it over in the same way I've been felt screwed over my whole life, and I'm going to go out with it. And ultimately that's a connection thing. That's a lack of connection thing. As much as they think they're getting connection online with their community, or basically murder simulators that they're playing all day. And they were like, why do they want to kill people? Why aren't you more into sports? Well, they're playing murder simulators all day.
Exactly.
That's what they're into. And I'm not here to blame video games, but, the world's a little different than was Mortal Kombat that I was being attacked on as a child. And because that was fairly fantasy and fantastical. Now they're playing games and stuff that are pretty real world, that basically show exactly what a lot of these people do. Look, that's got to play a role in it. I never thought I'd be the person arguing about video game violence. But, it ain't the same as it was in the 90s.
No, some of it's absolutely horrific. There's one game, I won't give the name of it because I don't want to promote it, but it's a game about rape. And it's incredibly disturbing. And one of the books another book I wrote in the past was about video game addiction. And so I talked about that game a bit. And the degree of sadistic violence in games now, super disturbing. It is. I don't play many. I have an arcade right outside of the studio of 90s games. I don't play current games very much. My daughter does, but they're not, she's not playing Call of Duty and Mortal Kombat. But it is shocking. If you haven't picked up a game lately or seen it, the level of realism, it's stunning. Yes.
And, again, plenty of people play it, and it's an outlet for them in some way, shape, or form. Let me ask you that, because it's something I've been curious for a very long time about. Look, the school shooting numbers and all that stuff has skyrocketed. And I can see a direct correlation to a little game called Grand Theft Auto 3 that was released in about 2001-ish. And it was after that, after we simulated living real life and going on killing sprees, that we saw people going in real life and going on killing sprees at mass numbers. I'm not specifically blaming Grand Theft Auto. If it wasn't them, something else would have done it. Has this, in some ways, the evolution of these games, has it been more of a cathartic thing, giving people who otherwise would go out and shoot a place up a place to do it safely, civilly, in their own home, on their own screen? Or has this necessarily increased the idea and increased the likelihood that someone's going to go act this out over the last 25 years of evolution of these things?
We have some research on people who have committed mass murders and video game play. And it seems that they play in a qualitatively different way. They do immerse themselves in their character to the point they're identifying with whatever character that they're portraying in the game, their avatar. And they really view it as rehearsal. And so I think a lot of people can stay clear on this is just a fantasy. They don't take it seriously. They're not fantasizing about murdering people in real life. But some of these guys, and again, they tend to be autistic. They tend to have a lot of social problems. They tend to be angry. The games reinforce that sense of power comes through the weapon and power comes through killing. And they get very desensitized to horrific violence. So I've been really concerned for a long time about the graphic violence in video games. And yeah, they're murder simulators. That's my term.
If there's one thing that stands out from that conversation, it's this. None of this happens in a vacuum. No one wakes up one day and decides they hate women or the world or humanity. These beliefs take time to calcify. They're built from disconnection, from untreated rage, from spending years in online echo chambers where murder becomes a game, women become targets, and identity becomes a costume you wear in digital spaces until it leaks into the real world. The word incel isn't just an internet label anymore. It's a worldview. And as Shavaun made perfectly clear, it's one that doesn't just lead to mass killings. Sometimes it just leads to miserable, broken people ruining everything and everyone around them, one relationship at a time. It's not always about body counts. Sometimes the emotional wreckage left in their wake is just as devastating. We also touched on something that doesn't get talked about enough: porn culture and video game immersion. Not in some moral panic way from the 90s, but in a real psychological sense. If a kid is spending all day playing graphic murder simulators, watching rape fantasy porn, and soaking in content that glorifies domination and violence, what do we think that does over time? Especially in a mind that's already fragile, already angry, already looking for something else to blame. And the answer isn't take away the keyboard and hope for the best. The answer is connection, mentorship, conversation, interruption, and patience. Because if Shavaun pointed out, or as Shavaun pointed out, if someone's too far gone for you to reach them as a parent, maybe a coach can, maybe a therapist can, maybe someone outside the house can break through the wall. But they'll never do it if no one tries. This isn't about blaming video games or calling for censorship. It's about admitting not every kid knows how to separate reality from fantasy, especially when the fantasy is all they've got. And the more real that fantasy gets, the harder it is to pull them back out. So if you're a parent, a teacher, a sibling, a friend, you don't need to have all the answers. But be in the room. Stay connected. Interrupt the spiral before it comes a worldview. Because if we wait until someone points out and posts that manifesto, it's already too late. Let me know what your comments are, what your thoughts are in the comment section on YouTube. Just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi if you're not already there. And hit subscribe on the podcast platform as well so you don't miss any of our updates on this case and all the cases we talk about here at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. hit that subscribe button above all else. Really, really do appreciate that. Until next time, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.